Well, Catharine Arnston, always great to connect. You're just a wealth of knowledge. And I love algae. It's something I use from your company, ENERGYbits, every day. And something I've always been fascinated with. And I think you're really the best speaker, the best communicator when it comes to overall algae nutrition. So excited to have you here. And let's start with why you think chronic disease and inflammation is so out of control and escalating in our society today.
Yes, yes, great question. Well, everything I've been reading seems to identify two major reasons. The first one is that, our bodies just aren't being nourished the way they used to be because our soils are so undernourished. They've been so monocropped and overcropped that when you plant things in there, there's not enough minerals for the plants to have nourishment in them, whether they're plants for you to eat or plants that are being fed to other animals to eat. So just like your cell phone, I mean, if you don't charge your cell phone every night, you're not going to have juice to communicate the following day. And your body is no different. If you don't give it the nutrients or the juice, the electricity, which comes from nutrients that are in the food, it's also not going to perform for you optimally. So that's number one. We simply do not have the nourishment in our food. Of course, that's even before even talking about the fact that most food that certainly teenagers and kids are eating are overprocessed, and we all sadly do eat a lot of processed foods, but that's on top of the fact that the vegetables just don't have the nutrients that they used to. And there's studies that document this. Like broccoli has like a tenth of the nutrients that it had 50 years ago. The other problem is that we are surrounded by toxins. It's in the air, in the water, in our clothing, in our cosmetics. It's impossible to avoid toxins. And I read that the average adult now has 700 toxins in their body. So when you have toxins, whether it's glyphosate, pesticide, heavy metals from corroding water pipes in your town's system, doesn't matter what it is, these toxins intercept cell communication. They get into your cell walls. They get into your mitochondria, and it's like someone stealing your parking spot. I live in Boston, and people like to protect or maybe they've paid for a parking spot, but when somebody's in your parking spot, you're stuck. There's nowhere for you to go. Well, the toxins lodge themselves into your cell membranes. So even if you are now eating healthy foods like spirulina, the nourishment can't get into the cells because the toxins have taken their spot. So if we can remove the toxins, and chlorella, as you'll find out, is one of the best ways to do that, then now you're getting the nourishment, because we're going to talk about how spirulina fills all the nourishing gaps, and by doing so helps reduce inflammation, which 90% of inflammation, by the way, I don't know if people talk about this, 90% of it is in your mitochondria. So as you find out, the spirulina protects the mitochondria, reduces the free radical damage that's occurring, which therefore reduces inflammation. And when you have more reduced inflammation, your mitochondria are functioning better, your cells are able to generate more cellular energy. And then when you have the chlorella that pulls out the toxins, then everything's working properly. And if you don't have the piece where you're pulling out the toxins, to use the cellular cell phone analogy, it's like, when you upgrade to a new cell phone and you realize you got to get a new charger cord because the old cord doesn't fit the new one. If you're not pulling out the toxins, just giving the nutrition in isn't enough. You've got to do both. Good stuff in, bad stuff out.
Yeah, super important. And, I've heard it said that chronic disease really comes down to toxicity and deficiency at the cellular level,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And, some would say toxicity is a even bigger issue because, again, when your cells are toxic, you can't get the nutrients in. So,
Right.
like you said, doesn't mean you just need to focus on toxicity. You actually need to address both, but
Correct.
we need to really prioritize detoxification, cellular cleansing. That's so important in our society today where we have so much chemicals. And so let's talk about the different types of algae. You got your blue green, your spirulina, like you talked about. You got your
Yes.
chlorophyll rich, like chlorella. Let's talk about algae, everything to do with algae.
Everything algae. I love talking about algae. So, yeah, algae, by the way, is a food. Yes, it is in the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, and the streams, but it is a food in its own category, food. And we grow ours in triple filtered spring mountain water. I'm going to show you algae farm. There's a spirulina farm, and that's our chlorella farm. And so they're grown in triple filtered spring mountain water. So I want to mention that because there's so much toxicity in the ocean that you think, well, why should I don't want algae from the ocean. Well, I want to assure you that spirulina and chlorella are grown in fresh water. We're known for having the triple filtered spring mountain water, and we do other things that make sure that they're even more protected from other toxins. But whether you buy spirulina or chlorella at Target or Whole Foods, pretty much guaranteed that they're grown in fresh water. So number one, algae is a food, and spirulina and chlorella are grown as food crops. Now, they have completely different effects on the body. Spirulina, as you mentioned, is a blue-green algae, and we call ours ENERGYbits. And we actually package it in blue because it's a blue-green algae. We called it ENERGYbits because spirulina gives you energy in the moment and also at the cellular level. And I do want to get into some detail on the cellular level with the mitochondria, but just to give you some sort of quick notes, the energy comes from the high protein that's found in spirulina. It has the highest concentration of protein in the world, and all the protein's already in amino acid form, which means your body doesn't have to do anything to break down the protein to get access to the aminos. Here's a chart that shows animal protein all bound up. So it can take days for your body to break it down. And very often you only absorb about 10% of it as aminos. Then you have collagen powder, which are in clusters of aminos. And then you have algae, which is individual aminos. So because they're individual, it makes it easy for your body to absorb. And spirulina is actually a bacteria. It has no cellulose wall. So this makes it even easier for your body to absorb it. And because it's loaded with B vitamins, it converts the aminos into energy. So these are the little tablets that we sell. They'll see the difference in color. This is a blue-green algae. This is spirulina, and this is chlorella, which is a green algae. So as I said, spirulina has two pigments in it, a blue one called phycocyanin, and also the green one, which is chlorophyll. But so that's how you get energy in the moment. And the kind of energy you get is not like a big burst and then a crash like you would get from a stimulant. A stimulant would be sugar or caffeine or chemicals. And the analogy I make for stimulants is it's like putting a paper on the fire. You get a big burst, but then you have a crash. Algae, because it's really stimulates your energy at the cellular level, is like putting a log on the fire. It's very steady. And in fact, you almost wouldn't notice it because it's not a stimulant. So if you're doing a workout, or you'll notice that you have more energy, or that you're not as fatigued, or that your hunger is satisfied. But it's a very, very, what I call quiet energy. So that's the main thing of spirulina, giving you energy and nourishment. By the way, it's ketogenic. So if you're on a keto diet, it's great. There's 0 carbs. It does not interfere with your fast. If you are trying to lose weight, or if you are on Ozempic or one of the GLP-1s, you need to be taking this, because when you're taking those drugs, you may be losing weight, but you're losing muscle mass. And that's a real big problem. And so because spirulina has the highest protein in the world, you can prevent that kind of loss. And you will never have cravings, and you won't be tired, and all that sort of good stuff. So that's spirulina in the moment, giving you energy. But more importantly, because it has nutrients in it that aren't found in any other food, like superoxide dismutase, which is an antioxidant, or the blue pigment that makes it blue called phycocyanin. This heals your mitochondria, and it gets into the mitochondria so that they can generate more cellular energy. And I explain to people that cellular energy is like money. When you have more cellular energy, your body and your cells can do more things. They have more energy to fight a cold. Your neurotransmitters will move better. They will help eliminate toxins better. Cellular energy is used for your heartbeat, your breathing, absolutely everything. So you want more cellular energy. The problem is, as you get older, you have fewer mitochondria, so therefore you have less cellular energy, or the ones that you have get damaged because of too many free radicals or toxins. So they're not performing very well either. So, and I do want to spend some time to explain the particular pathway that helps where the spirulina helps the mitochondria heal, because it's really fascinating, all science-based. And when you understand it, you'll really understand why and how you can reduce this inflammation, reduce these free radicals, and get back your cellular energy. So spirulina, very energizing in the moment and at the cellular level. So it's very healing to the cell wall. By the way, your brain has the most mitochondria in it. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And so when you heal the mitochondria, one of the first things you're healing is your brain. And there's so much recognition right now of brain health and depression. And so there's a great book that came out last year by Dr. Chris Palmer called Brain Energy. And he talks about how all brain health issues, including, are caused by inflammation, which is caused by damaged mitochondria. Yep. So when I get to the opportunity to tell you why spirulina is helpful to regain your mitochondrial functionality and also repopulate your mitochondria, the first thing that it will help will be your brain. It will reduce the inflammation and help your brain function better. So, so that's the sort of the high level benefit of spirulina.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to talk about that pathway. My hypothesis is it has to do with the ability to boost superoxide dismutase, because you have your three major mitochondrial antioxidants: glutathione peroxidase or peroxide, glutathione peroxidase, I believe. And then you've got catalase and you've got superoxide dismutase.
Yes.
And so that tends to be the rate limiting one.
Exactly. Well, catalase is actually in the cell, not in the mitochondria. But here's the cool thing. So spirulina is documented. We have lab tests to have the highest concentration of superoxide dismutase in the world. Chlorella has the highest glutathione in the world. Spirulina has second highest. So those are two very critical antioxidants that can get into the inner membrane of the mitochondria and reduce the inflammation that's going on. So do you want me to go through the pathway?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Because it's pretty cool. And we'll get to chlorella in a minute. So I want to help people, give them a bit of a science lesson. So here's your cell. And inside the cell, you have your nucleus and you have all these little peanut-shaped things that are the mitochondria. Now, remember, there's 2 million of these per cell in your brain. And then inside the mitochondria, this is where the ATP is produced. That's what cellular energy is. But what people don't realize is a byproduct of ATP is free radicals. And here's the problem, and most people don't know this either. Your mitochondria have their own DNA. There's only 37 of them, and you have 22,000 regular DNA, but the mitochondria DNA really control the regular DNA. They control cellular communication. But guess what? They're located exactly where the free radicals are released as part of the ATP production. So they're constantly getting damaged. And when they get damaged, that's when they can't produce cellular energy very well. And so I want you to understand how cellular energy is actually produced, what this whole process is. There's a series of molecules, because I didn't point out, but the mitochondria have two membranes. There's an outer membrane, like on all your cell walls, but it has an inner membrane that only exists in the mitochondria. And I can tell you why and how that is. So the way that the cellular energy is produced is there are molecules that are embedded in that inner membrane. And what they do, it's sort of like a relay race. If you've ever watched a relay race, there's a runner who has a baton and he passes it to the next runner who then runs with the baton, and hopefully they cross the finish line and win the race. Well, similar kind of concept, the way that ATP is produced, this is called the electron transport chain. But instead of runners, you have these molecules. And instead of a baton being passed from one molecule to the next, you have electrons. And when they pass the electrons from one to the next, the final stage is that production of ATP. And there are two helper molecules I'll point out. One is called cytochrome C, and the other one is CoQ10, and we'll talk about those in a minute. So that's how ATP cellular energy is produced. Now, in your mitochondria, when they're healthy, all of those molecules are located nearby each other. So it's like having the runners having a nice handoff of that baton. But as your mitochondria get damaged from free radicals, what happens is the mitochondria start to expand. Eventually, that explodes. It's called necrosis, and that spills out all the damaged free radicals into your neighboring cells. But anyways, when you have too much free radicals going on, and I'll tell you where they come from. They basically come from carbs or not having proper nutrition in your cells. When they become too far away, well, they can't pass the electrons very well. It's like asking Tom Brady to throw the football in a stadium that's 4 times the size of a regular stadium. So number one, when they can't pass the electrons efficiently like they would if they were healthy, you don't get as much ATP because the electrons aren't being passed along. So that's number one. You get decreased cellular energy when you have damaged mitochondria. Number two, those electrons don't disappear. They leak out into the rest of the mitochondria and become free radicals. This is why and how the process of free radical damage just escalates and escalates and escalates. So here's an example, a real picture. Here's a healthy mitochondria, and here's a damaged mitochondria. See all the empty spaces? A real photo. This is where mitochondria have not, all those molecules have been damaged, and so they can't pass the electrons along, and so they leak out, and that leakage causes inflammation. The inflammation are free radicals that have exceeded the capability of the mitochondria to contain them. And this is where inflammation comes. So the great thing is spirulina contains this antioxidant called superoxide dismutase. It's the highest concentration of superoxide dismutase in the world. And there are 25,000 studies in the PubMed and online medical libraries that prove that superoxide dismutase reduces inflammation, prevents Alzheimer's, prevents heart disease, all these great things that superoxide dismutase does. But the problem is it's not available in any food except spirulina, algae, and to a lesser extent in chlorella. The other interesting thing is that your body makes superoxide dismutase for you from the moment that you're born. However, by the age of 30, the production level decreases, and by the time you're 40 or 50, you have virtually zero superoxide dismutase. So the analogy I make for people is, you know, Mother Nature's so smart, so clever, that she gave us superoxide dismutase because she knew there were going to be free radicals being produced in that ATP production. So superoxide dismutase was part of our composition. And think of it as a big umbrella, like a big golf umbrella. We've all seen those huge, big golf umbrellas, right? So all of our life up until the age of 30, we've had this umbrella protecting us from the rain of free radicals resulting from ATP. It's a byproduct, you can't avoid it. But once you hit 30, that umbrella got smaller. Now it's just a city umbrella. Then it got smaller by the time you're 40, and by the time you're 50, it's like a cocktail umbrella, and then none. So to me, this is one of the main explanations, I believe, why there's so much chronic illness and inflammation after the age of 40, because the critical antioxidant called superoxide dismutase is no longer being produced by our bodies, and it's not found in any other food. And the scientists don't know yet that it's in spirulina and chlorella because they do such research in very tight silos. Nobody's told them about superoxide dismutase being available in spirulina. But one catch, superoxide dismutase, it's an antioxidant, as I've explained, but it's also an enzyme. and enzymes are damaged by high heat.
Mm.
So if you are buying a lower priced algae that has been dried with high heat, and most of them are because they need to get to market quickly, that high heat kills the superoxide dismutase. It deactivates it. So you may be getting spirulina if you might be getting still the protein and some other nutrients if you buy it from Target or a lower quality source, but you're not getting the inflammation protection of superoxide dismutase if it was dried with high heat, and almost all of them are. I will say you can also use raw or frozen spirulina because, of course, it has not been exposed to high heat. And there are two really great wellness institutes that I'm aware of, and we hope to work with them. One is the Hippocrates Institute, which is 50 years old, based in Palm Beach, and the other one is the Gershon Institute. They operate out of San Diego, but have a clinic in Mexico. And in both cases, they take patients who are in stage 3, stage 4 cancer, and to help them with a plant-based diet and massage and red light therapy and juicing and sprouts, but they always give them fresh spirulina. And I believe it's because, well, there's a couple of nutrients. I want to talk about another one, the blue pigment that kills cancer cells. It helps their cells start to regenerate more cellular energy because the superoxide dismutase is being able to protect the mitochondria again. And when you have more cellular energy, you can fight invaders, viruses, diseases with more power. It turns the lights back on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, real powerful stuff. And that was a great explanation there. So let's go into, the blue-green element of spirulina, which is the, what is it? Phycocyanin.
Yes.
And then also what makes chlorella so powerful too.
Yeah. Well, so blue-green algae, I still think is Mother Nature's best discovery, creation for us. It was the first life on Earth. And as you mentioned, that blue pigment, phycocyanin, I'm going to show you how to spell it. It's Phycocyanin. And the reason I want you to know how to spell it is because then you can go online and Google it for yourself. Because this blue pigment doesn't exist anywhere else in nature. Only in spirulina. So not in blueberries, not in anything else, just spirulina. And it is an antioxidant. And it's a water-based pigment, which is interesting because I'll tell you why it's important. But the most important thing about phycocyanin is that it has been proven to kill cancer cells. And so I'm going to show you a paper that is available on PubMed. What they did is they took cancer cells and they dyed them purple. And then they added phycocyanin to the Petri dish, and they took pictures over a 24-hour period. And after 24 hours, the cancer was virtually gone. And so this is because that's what phycocyanin does. And the pathway by which it happens, remember I showed you, when I showed you the electron transport chain, there were the 4 molecules, and there are 2 little helper molecules. They're sort of like little shuttle buses. Well, the phycocyanin in a healthy cell triggers that one of those helper molecules, which is called cytochrome C, it triggers it to move faster. So it moves the electrons through the electron transport chain faster. And what does that do? Generates more energy because you've got more electrons moving and it's efficient. So in a healthy cell, the blue pigment in spirulina generates more cellular energy. And again, more cellular energy means less inflammation. So that's number one. But in an unhealthy cell, we're talking a cancer cell or something called a senescent cell, which is basically a cell that is subdivided so many times that the DNA, the telomeres have shrunk, and they're now inflammatory, but they don't die. They just sort of keep hanging around and they cause problems. So in an unhealthy cell, that blue pigment called phycocyanin detects that it's a cancer or unhealthy cell, ejects the cytochrome C molecule that then kills the cancer or senescent cell. Unbelievable, right? Yeah. So this is why I call spirulina intelligent food.
Mhm.
First of all, you have to be intelligent to take it, but it knows what to do in your body. And it's so clever to me because that, as I mentioned, that phycocyanin is a water-based pigment. So, and that that cytochrome C molecule is also a water-based pigment. And this differs from that other helper molecule, which is CoQ10. Now, CoQ10 is a fat-based molecule. And the other pigment in spirulina and also chlorella is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll makes plants green. Well, guess what? Chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment. So it does the same thing as the blue pigment does to the cytochrome C molecule. It stimulates the CoQ10 molecule to move the electrons around, and it basically recycles the CoQ10 molecule so it can continue to generate ATP for us. There's some really cool science out there that shows when you have red light, which could be from sunlight or red light devices, and chlorophyll, it stimulates this helper molecule, CoQ10, to recycle. But I thought it was so clever that that was a fat-based molecule, and cytochrome C is a water-based molecule, and spirulina has both of those pigments in it. So you get double the kick from improving your electron transport chain, which improves your cellular energy. And when you have more cellular energy, that means you have efficiency in your generation of ATP, which A, gives you more energy, B, means there's fewer electrons spilling out to be inflammatory. It's a win-win.
Yeah, really, really great explanation here. And so let's talk about ENERGYbits and like what's differentiating that. You talked about kind of you talked about the triple filtered water. You talked about how you guys aren't using heat, which a lot of companies are using heat, which is affecting the superoxide dismutase. Can you go into some of the other details behind how you guys make the ENERGYbits?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to dwell a little bit more on that heat because it is probably the most important thing that separates us from anybody else. Because not only does that high heat, when you get to 114 Fahrenheit, it damages and deactivates all enzymes. And superoxide dismutase, as you mentioned, is an enzyme. So you lose that benefit immediately because it's been deactivated. But I also found some science that shows same thing happens with phycocyanin. When it's exposed to heat, the ability for it to be anti-inflammatory and to have that benefit of the cancer-killing capability just plummets. So when you are buying the lower quality algae that has probably been exposed to high heat, you lose the two nutrients that are most powerful to protect us from the two most damaging chronic illnesses in our world right now, which are cancer and heart disease. So that's a pretty important thing for people to understand. And we want to ensure that you're going to get maximum value from the algae. And also, I tell people growing algae isn't like growing broccoli. It's more like making wine. And when you make wine, it's the production process that determines so many of the attributes of wine. Same with algae. This is very complicated. Spirulina is easier to grow. Chlorella, very complicated. And I'm going to tell you one more thing that separates us from the other companies. Nobody would ever be able to grow chlorella in their backyard because the way you have to grow it, you start it in a little test tube and it grows for a little bit. Then you move it to a bigger test tube, then it grows a little bit. Then you go to a bigger test tube. Then you move it to what's called a pond. There is outdoor farm and it's a small pond. Then it grows a little bit. Then you move it to a bigger pond. Then it grows a little bit. Then it grows so it's quite a process. Once you finish growing it from all those stages, then you dry it without high heat, at least we do, so that you preserve all those nutrients because anytime you use high heat, this is why we just did a chart to compare algae to some of these dried powders that are on the market. Anytime you use high heat, you scramble the nutrients and you decrease the efficacy. So our algae, both spirulina and chlorella, are raw foods because we don't use high heat. And so even if you're using powders, I can almost promise you that you're not getting the same efficacy because they've had to use high heat. But back to the chlorella. So chlorella does have a hard cell wall, and we will talk about some of the benefits of chlorella. We call ours recovery bits. It has a very hard cell wall. Remember, spirulina has none because it's actually a bacteria. This hard cell wall needs to be cracked at production. Now, most companies use the original technique, which is to tumble the chlorella with glass beads to physically, hammer the cell wall. But there's heat that is generated in that process, which deteriorates the quality of the chlorella, and some lead from the glass leaks into the chlorella. Now, we didn't get into what chlorela's benefits are yet, but one of the key ones is it pulls out toxins that are interfering with your body's capability and your cellular communication to be healthy. So you don't want to introduce toxins when you're using something to pull them out. So we don't use that technique. We have a patent pending process that we use, which is we pass the chlorella through basically a sound chamber, and it's vibrations that crack the chlorella. So there's no heat and there's no lead. So it's a much safer way to, and keeps the nutrient value so much higher because there's no exposure to all these heats. So and then we import our tablets in large quantity, and we package them here in a UV protected packaging, whether it's bags or boxes or canisters. And then so it's, and we, as Dr. Jockers, we do our very best to educate people about the nutrients in the different algae and how to use them. So it's so there's lots of steps required to ensure efficacy. And I started the company 14 years ago when my younger sister had breast cancer. She's fine now, but her oncologist told her to change her diet to an alkaline diet because it would help with her healing. And I helped her with that, which led me to plant-based nutrition, which led me to algae, the most alkaline food in the world. But it's like anything, the quality determines the efficacy. And whether you're buying leather handbags or a house or algae, if you make sure you focus on the quality, you'll get better efficacy, but also you'll need less. We recommend for the regular dosage, 10 spirulina is pretty good for the most people, and take it in the morning or the afternoon to give you energy, to satisfy your hunger, good workout. And 10 chlorella, we recommend it generally before bed because that's when your body goes through a detox repair cycle. So this will pull out toxins and actually helps you sleep. And we sell the tablets in large bags of 1,000 tablets. So if you took 10 tablets a day, and we have a 20% discount code to share with your audience, 10 tablets a day works out to $1 a day. So I tell people $1 a day, that's like a third of a Starbucks coffee. You're worth $1 a day, and each tablet has the same nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables. We have a great quote from NASA that says 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of vegetables. So each tablet has the same nutrition as vegetables, but maybe you don't like vegetables, or maybe they give you gas, or your kids won't eat them, or maybe you're a carnivore and you don't want lectins and oxalates. There's a lot of reasons why people aren't eating vegetables. So you can have algae because it's paleo, it's carnivore friendly, it's vegan, it's low carb, low cal, great for fasting, ketogenic. I mean, it's great for every lifestyle, and $1 a day, it's within everybody's financial reach. And you can use other devices to help with your other biohacks, red light, cryotherapy, to facilitate healing and keep your inflammation levels down. But honestly, algae is a no-brainer. And in fact, we didn't even talk about how much it's so good for your brain health. In fact, that's why I call spirulina brain food, and chlorella, because it's so healing and detoxing, it's really gut food. So the two of them work quite differently, but also synergistically.
Yeah, I love the ENERGYbits products. And so my family, we use these on a regular basis. And I know that you now have a free report as well on improving mitochondrial health and algae. And then, of
Yes.
course, that 20% discount. I believe that code is CCIS.
Yes,
And so
CCIS.
CCIS, so simple code right there at ENERGYbits.com. And tell us a little bit more about, obviously, you talked about this connection between mitochondrial health and algae. And so you've got this free report.
Yeah, well, uh, ultimately, well, here's a couple of things. First of all, spirulina, as I mentioned, is a blue-green algae, and that it's a bacteria. It's called a cyanobacteria.
Mm.
And a cyanobacteria was the first life on Earth almost 4 billion years ago. And uh, scientists have shown back from the 60s, they started discovering this, that the cyanobacteria evolved to become our mitochondria. And so it's no surprise to me that the anything that's in the algae, the highest chlorophyll, highest glutathione, highest superoxide dismutase, gets into the mitochondria to help with its production, for its life, for its regeneration, because they're sort of family. And this explains as well why mitochondria have that inner membrane that doesn't exist in any other cells. Because originally, this cyanobacteria was all by itself. It was an anaerobic cell, and it generated enough oxygen after 1 billion years that larger cells could start growing, but they didn't generate ATP as well as the anaerobic cell. So the larger cell basically absorbed the smaller cell and put a second membrane around it, and that cyanobacteria became your mitochondria. But here's the thing. That original cell membrane, when it was out by itself, didn't disappear. It just had a fat membrane put around it. So when you are taking spirulina or chlorella, it is able to get into that inner membrane. Drugs can't get in there. Most antioxidants like vitamin C or vitamin E can't get in there. Only the ones that are found in algae, especially spirulina, can get through there. And it's because there aren't what's called porins. Porins are these little channels that are in your fat membranes that allow proteins and molecules in and out, and there aren't any in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. But glutathione can get in there, chlorophyll can get in there, and so can superoxide dismutase, which is the most powerful.
Yeah,
So
and melatonin, not from
melatonin as
supplements,
well.
but
Yes, melatonin as
from
well.
infrared exposure will
Yes.
stimulate that mitochondrial melatonin, which is a powerful antioxidant. So it's actually from sunlight or infrared. Obviously, we can get that in an infrared sauna or like a red infrared panel, something along those lines. But that's also a stimulator there.
Yeah, and most people only know melatonin as something that helps them sleep. It manages their circadian rhythm. But melatonin was part of that original single cell organism 4 billion years ago. The melatonin that manages the circadian rhythm is only 200 million years old. I know that sounds funny, only 200 million, but for 3 billion years, it was an antioxidant at the cellular level. Most of your melatonin, 80 to 90% of your melatonin, is at the cellular level, not managing your circadian rhythm. The mitochondria are where everything is your health, everything to do with your health has to do with your mitochondria. So what I want people to help understand is that when anything that you can do to improve the health of your mitochondria, and the number of them will automatically decrease inflammation and improve your own health. So one of the things that you can do that doesn't cost you anything is to change your diet, because it turns out carbs, processed carbs, generate the most free radicals, because most free radicals escape through that electron transport chain and they convert into free radicals. So you could just get into a low carb diet or adopt a keto diet, but fasting, intermittent fasting or algae create the fewest free radicals. So one of the things you can do is change your diet. Just start eliminating those processed carbs to reduce the amount of electrons that are escaping, which will automatically protect your mitochondria and therefore reduce inflammation. The other thing, so that's reducing your free radicals. The other thing you can do is remove the free radicals, because now we've reduced them. Now we want to remove them. But as I mentioned, most antioxidants can't get in there, but superoxide dismutase is the most powerful antioxidant for that purpose. Now, I was curious as to why that was. And so I learned that the type of free radical that is produced in the mitochondria is called superoxide. And it is known to be the most damaging free radical of all free radicals. So I thought, well, what's so damaging about this particular antioxidant or free radical? And I found out, and if you know anything about free radicals, they have an unpaired electron in their molecule structure. And so Mother Nature likes harmony. And so when you have an unpaired electron, that molecule will seek out somebody else's electron and steal it to balance itself out. It's like a kid being at school and they didn't have a lunch that day, so they took somebody else's lunch, and then that person has to take somebody else's. So antioxidants have extra electrons that they are able to donate to the free radical to balance out that harmony, and so there is no damage going on at the cellular or tissue level. But superoxide has 3 unpaired electrons, so it's 3 times as damaging. And that's why this one antioxidant called superoxide dismutase is so critical to get in there, because basically what it does is it turns those free radicals, superoxide, into water. So now there's no damage being done to the mitochondria. Remember, again, that umbrella idea. Superoxide dismutase gives you back the umbrella to protect yourself from the rain of free radicals that are coming out from the electron transport chain as ATP is being produced. And you had this umbrella from the moment you were born until 30, and then got pulled away. And you can't get superoxide dismutase from food, but you can get it from algae. So it's to me, it's a remarkable discovery, and I can't wait for more people to understand this, because it seems to me the easiest, simplest food-based way to protect your mitochondria. And when they're protected, now they can repopulate, they can generate better cellular energy. And as soon as you have more cellular energy, you're going to have more energy to do everything, whether it's fighting disease, thinking better, having your heart protected. That's why they have found that superoxide dismutase is a critical nutrient for preventing heart disease. And a large part of that is because of the reduced inflammation that's occurring at the mitochondria level. I tell people, I never eat alone. I always eat with my mitochondria. So if you are aware that they're on your side, they want to help you be healthy. And another analogy I use to help people understand this, think of your body as a building. And in a building, you have offices, and all the work that gets done in the offices are done because there's lights in the offices. And as the lights go out, maintenance people come and put them back in so everybody can keep going. Well, you're in your body, think of those offices like cells, and the lights are the mitochondria. But as you get older, the mitochondria die. It's like the lights going out, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have things like superoxide dismutase, there's nobody to turn the lights back on. So think of spirulina, and to a certain extent chlorella, as something that will turn the lights back on. It will get your mitochondria working again, operating efficiently again. And when that's happening, everything else will fall into place.
Well, powerful stuff, Catherine. This is really great. I'm a huge fan, of course, of algae, and in particular your company, ENERGYbits. You guys do a really great job with that. Guys, check them out, ENERGYbits.com. And again, you can use that code CCIS to get 20% off those products. They're amazing stuff. Catherine, thanks again so much for your time and your expertise. Any last words of inspiration here for our audience?
Well, aging does not need to equal declining. And I'll be honest, I'm approaching 70. like I'm going to be 68, so I still got a couple of years to go. But I have all my brain functionality, my physical functionality, my skin is healthy, I sleep, I poop, I do everything great. And I've been using algae, both spirulina and chlorella, for 14 years. So whatever health condition you have, there's an opportunity to regain or protect, either protect what you have or regain what you've lost. And it does require some attention to what your lifestyle choices are, but it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to be Brian Johnson and spending $5 million to reverse your biological age. So I just want to let you know that everything is possible. And the greatest things that help your health are the simplest things: sleep, breathing, movement. And I put algae right in there because it was the first life on Earth. It's still here. It's a single cell organism packed with nutrition, and it was a gift to us from Mother Nature, like everything else. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be expensive. And everybody can do it, and just sort of dial it down and use the things that have been here for centuries. Just take another look at them.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks so much, Catherine. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Jock.